Hi, I'm Brian Garman, the artistic director and co-founder of Berkshire Opera Festival. Joining me today is the bass Erik Anstine, who not only is a marvelously talented artist, but who also has been a friend and colleague of mine for the past 10 years, ever since he was in the Young Artist Training Program at Seattle Opera when I was the music director. He will be singing the role of Leporello, Don Giovanni's trusted fixer in our semi-staged concert production of Don Giovanni this August. Erik, welcome. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks, Brian. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I sort of half assumed that you might be sporting a Quarren beard today, but I see that you've found the razor.
I have. I'm going for the Quarren clean look.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, and you're going to be shaved by Zerlina in the second act of Giovanni anyway. Well, in theory. So are you back in New York at the moment, or are you away?
I am. I've been at home this entire time.
Oh, you've been here the whole time. Well, good. Erik, I'd like to dive right in with Don Giovanni. One of the things that makes this opera so successful is what I think is the perfect balance that Mozart was able to strike between tragedy and comedy. He calls the piece a dramma giocoso, which is not a full-out comedy like Don Pasquale we did in the Berkshires last summer, but it means a jovial drama or a drama with humor. And I think quite often a lot of directors and conductors make the mistake of playing it as a great tragedy, which it is in a sense, but they overlook the moments of comedy and lightness that we need to make the whole thing bearable. It's like Alfred Hitchcock said that he thought of Psycho as a comedy because otherwise you just couldn't take it. So the reason I bring this up is because in Don Giovanni, the heavy lifting of the comic relief is done by Leporello. Now, as a bass, you have to play a lot of fathers and bad guys, but there's not always a great deal of opportunity to play comic characters. Do you enjoy doing comedy?
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm not in my daily life only serious. I'm sometimes serious, but yeah.
I can attest to this.
If you're someone who has known me for, say, 10 years or so.
Right, and I guess you've done a fair amount of it, haven't you? I remember Truffaldino and Ariadne of Naxos. I know you've done Bartolo and Marriage of Figaro. I'm sure there are others. Do you find that you prepare a role like Leporello differently from something more serious, like, I don't know, Colline in La Boheme, for example?
There are definitely different aspects. I would say, personally, the approach is pretty similar, where you know, trying to find the comedy or trying to find the little turns in phrasing or in the staging in your head or whatever that is. You know, you're reading the language in the same way. A more tragic part, you still look for the same corners and the same, you know, hooks that you can.
In what way?
So you know, what might be a sly look to the audience in a comedy, or you know, the rare gag. You'll have those on the serious side, but there'll be more. You want to embellish this. You want to. This is a place where you can dig into the role. This is a place where you can let the audience in to the seriousness. So I think that both sides have the same sort of corners that you need to look into and research and all of that.
So how do you? I mean, when you begin to tackle a role like Leporello or any role, what is your process? Do you mind to talk to us about that for a moment?
Sure. I think I start from two directions. First, I'll kind of approach it musically. I'll listen to recordings. I'll kind of hack through it on the piano, see what's going on, kind of get it in my ear. And then the other side, I need to have the drama, need to have the words in there, so I'll start translating. I'll probably look at a translated libretto first. Okay, get the gist, I'll go in and really get the dictionary out and comb through, you know, the words and really understand what it means for me and how I need to understand the words that I'm saying.
I see. Well, you know, so much of comedy is timing, and in Don Giovanni, like Marriage of Figaro, for example, so many of the jokes, pardon me, and so much of the humor is in the recitatives that separate the musical numbers. So I think how you pace those things has a great deal to do with whether a joke lands.
Yes.
You know, and so much of that pacing, of course, in a normal production is determined by the physical staging. So without that, and without sets and costumes, I know that makes your task all the more challenging.
Sure, but I believe in Da Ponte, I believe in Mozart, and everyone in it. It is just really that good that you can present it in a concert setting.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You mentioned Da Ponte. For our viewers, talking about Lorenzo da Ponte, who was the librettist of Don Giovanni for three of the great Mozart operas, in fact, Don Giovanni and Così fan tutte and The Marriage of Figaro, and happens to be buried in Queens, no less. I think it's fair to say that Leporello has become a signature role of yours. You've sung it at Seattle Opera and Edmonton, San Francisco Opera. And I'm curious how, if at all, your interpretation of it has changed since you and I first did it together back in 2011.
I think the most obvious differences between productions, in my opinion, the relationship between Giovanni and Leporello is the most important in the whole opera. And I'm biased, sure, but I think it's kind of the central relationship. And so it really depends who you're performing with. Who your scene partner is. The same is true for all the other relationships, but especially for Leporello, it's fairly important. And so a different Giovanni, a different production, you'll find that relationship in a different way. It could be there's more of an age difference. Could be there's more of a stature difference, things like that. I think it's been, what did we say, 9-10 years since my first Leporello, and of course I've changed as a person, and so the eyes through which I see the character, 9-10 years older, and I've lived more life and things like that.
Sure.
I've evolved as an artist. Every time I go back to the role, I do find there are more corners, more jokes, more drama, everything that I rediscover kind of having taken a break for a year or two from performing it, or whatever that has been. So it's great to go back and revisit. Yeah.
Sure. And I hear a construction noise or something going outside. We must be in phase 2 of...
We are officially in phase 2. I think the building across the way, they're taking down some scaffolding. So.
Oh, I see. Well, that's progress. So
it's progress. It's the beauty of
good. Erik, when you were in your young artist days, you went through, I know, 2 training programs here in the States, in Seattle and Los Angeles. But you also went on to spend 4 years in the ensemble of Zurich Opera, where you sang a number of roles. Now, I know that's not a training program in the way we're discussing it, but these were all formative experiences for you. And one of our followers has written to ask if you could talk a bit about how the experience a young singer gets might be different in America from what it might be in Europe.
Sure. It's a great question. When I first got to Europe, I was struck at how the way singers all interact with each other, and kind of the shorthand and the business lingo and all that, it was exactly the same. Different accents, different languages. And so that was, I didn't know anybody, but I was at home when I got over there. So there are very strong similarities. In the States, in respect to vocal technique, really what you get is the classic Italian technique, bel canto. And I think that's terrific, but that's generally what you get in the States. In Europe, I found, I had heard about, a more French technique, a more German technique. And you actually saw singers who had trained in those countries, usually from those countries, who sang in that way. And I found there were different colors. There was a broader palette in a certain way of the vocal techniques being employed. And I thought it was really interesting to see that, and then see how these singers would put roles on stage, and how I hadn't heard someone sing this role that way when I was in the States. Not saying better, not saying worse, but it was different. And it was, it's Europe. It's where opera came from. And so you did have that. I found the training programs in the States were more, in my experience, robust, preparing singers for the business of singing. I don't mean kind of dollars and cents, but sort of how to approach role preparation, how to stand up a character, how to tackle a score and translate into all that. And I think American singers in the US are expected to be able to sing in English, of course, French, German, Italian. Whereas in Europe, these roles might come up, but a French singer will be extremely comfortable singing in French, one would hope, and perhaps less so in German, perhaps less so in Italian.
Sure.
So I think we are expected to be very well-rounded.
Right, right. And of course, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think that's a great foundation upon which to build a career.
Some time ago, say maybe 50 years ago, of course, if an American singer wanted to do big things here at home, they often first had to go to Germany and make a career for themselves, and then they could come back to the States and be taken seriously. Fortunately, that's not really the case anymore. But broadly speaking, what do you think the opportunities for young American singers are like in Europe these days?
I think they're great. I think it's, I've had friends in the business who have asked me, what is it like? I've been thinking about doing this. I think it's a great idea if you can make it work. You really have to kind of leap over there. I was fortunate to have a long-term contract that took me over there. So that was relatively straightforward. I mean, sure, it's moving to a different continent, but yeah.
And you spoke German fairly fluently before you even left. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah. So I had that. Yeah, I had taken German in high school and college, and kind of with the mind of it's one of the musical languages, and so this could be useful, and so it proved. But no, I think the opportunities for American singers are great because generally we're good at all the languages. We sing quite well. And so we can be very usable.
Sure. Well, I wanted to point out a fun fact to our viewers, and that is that your sister Maya has played viola in the Berkshire Opera Festival Orchestra since our first season in 2016 with Madama Butterfly. So I'm curious, where does all this musical talent come from in your family?
As we have, as our family has gotten more and more into the genealogy thing, we keep hearing about relatives who could play all of these instruments and love to sing and gather around the fire and do all of that. And so I think there's some musical talent kind of deep in there. Mom played piano for a long time. We had a piano in the house growing up.
Is that right?
Yeah, and apart from that, we had great public school music programs. And I think I fell in with the wrong or the right crowd, depending on how you look at it, in terms of music. And my friends were into it. They told me to join, this choir, that choir, and it kind of went from there. And I wouldn't want to put words in Maya's mouth, but I think the great music scene at the schools we grew up in.
Well, so you and Maya are going to be sharing the stage quite literally this August.
Yes.
But have you ever had the chance to perform together before?
Not professionally. This will be our professional debut together.
Good. Well, I'm very glad to hear that. I know that you have many interests outside of music that lean toward the technological, and I always like to end these interviews by asking what keeps people busy when they're not singing. So could you tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. I work as a software engineer for a financial technology startup called Plaid. You may know Plaid if you use Venmo on your phone. We help connect your bank account to Venmo, for example. I had programmed on the side for, I don't know, 2 years, 7, 8 years, something like that. And as these things happen, my path kind of took me to working in tech.
So what was it that got you interested in programming in the first place? Do you remember?
Not really. I think I was always into computers growing up. When I started learning, it was one of those, I always did want to learn how to do that. It wasn't sort of and now I'm doing this is the right thing to do.
Sure.
I think I bought a programming book when I was 14 or something like that and didn't do much with it, but it was kind of blatantly in there.
Well, I think that's outstanding. I have a lot of friends, it seems like, who have been taking coding classes lately, and it's all fascinating to me as a Luddite. I mean, I'm good at some things, I hope, but technology, unfortunately, is not one of them. But I think it's great and extremely practical when people know how to do more than just one thing, especially these days.
And I will say you are a terrific keyboardist, so you're halfway there.
Well, thank you. And I can type.
Okay. 3/4.
Exactly, 3/4. I'll take it. I hope you can all come and hear Erik Anstine as Leporello in Berkshire Opera Festival's Don Giovanni this summer. The performance dates are Saturday, August 22nd, Tuesday, August 25th, and Friday, August 28th. Erik, I'm so happy that you agreed to spend a few minutes with us today, and I'm so looking forward to doing this great piece with you again in August. It's been too long.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks very much.